The tomb of the patriarchs may have existed before any patriarch was buried there. According to an ancient Jewish tradition, Adam and Eve were already inside the cave when Abraham purchased it for Sarah. But Genesis never says that. So, why did later Jewish writers place humanity's first couple beneath Abraham's family tomb? And what changes if the cave did not begin with Abraham at all? To answer that, we have to enter one of the most charged scenes in Genesis. Sarah has died. Abraham, the man who left his homeland because of a promise, stands in Canaan as a foreigner with nowhere of his own to bury his wife. He has traveled through the land, built altars, survived famine, conflict, fear, waiting, and impossible promises. Yet at the moment of Sarah's death, he does not own a family tomb. That is the first reversal. The man who was promised a land possesses no burial place in it. Genesis says Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, identified with Hebron. Abraham mourned for her, then rose from beside her and spoke to the people of the land. He called himself a foreigner and a resident among them, and asked for property where he could bury his dead. The local people offered him access to their finest tombs, but Abraham did not accept a temporary favor. He asked for one specific place, the Cave of Machpelah, at the edge of a field belonging to Ephron. The negotiation happened at the city gate. Ephron offered the field and the cave, but Abraham insisted on paying the full price. 400 shekels of silver were weighed out, and the field, the cave, and the trees within its boundaries became Abraham's legal possession. Then Sarah was buried there. On the surface, this is a story about grief, land, and a legal purchase. But later tradition saw something more. It asked a question Genesis never answers. Why this cave? Why did Abraham choose Machpelah rather than another burial place? Why was this location remembered as the resting place of his family? And why did it become so important that Jacob, generations later, demanded that his body be carried back from Egypt and buried there? Genesis gives us the names of those connected to the cave. Sarah was buried there first in the narrative. Abraham was buried beside her. Isaac and Rebekah were associated with the same burial place. Leah was buried there. Jacob instructed his sons to place him there as well. These are the patriarchal couples connected to Machpelah in Genesis. Adam and Eve are not included. The Bible gives Adam's age when he died, but no burial location. It gives even less information about Eve's death. There is no scene in Genesis describing their funeral. No cave, no field, no city, no marker, and no journey to Hebron. Yet, centuries later, a Jewish tradition placed them inside Machpelah. In the Babylonian Talmud, in a discussion about the meaning of the name Machpelah and the expression Kiryat Arba, one explanation identifies the place with four couples: Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. That addition changes the cave completely. Without Adam and Eve, Machpelah is the burial place of Abraham's family. With Adam and Eve, it becomes the place where the story of Israel's ancestors is joined to the story of the entire human family. And that may be the real reason the tradition endured. It does not merely claim that two more people were buried there, but it turns the cave into a bridge. Adam belongs to the beginning of humanity. Abraham belongs to the beginning of a covenant family through which blessing is promised to the nations. One is formed from the ground and told that he will return to it. The other is called to leave his land and walk toward a place he does not yet possess. One stands at the beginning of exile from Eden. The other stands at the beginning of a journey toward promise. Placing them in the same cave brings those two beginnings together. But a later Jewish work goes even further. Pirkei, de-Rabbi. Eliezer tells a dramatic story about Abraham and the cave. In that tradition, Abraham follows a calf into Machpelah. Inside, he discovers Adam and Eve. The place is filled with light and fragrance, and Abraham realizes that this is no ordinary burial site. According to that later account, his desire to possess the cave was not simply practical. He wanted it because the first man and woman were already there, and it is a powerful scene. Abraham enters a dark place while pursuing an animal and finds the beginning of human history resting beneath the earth. But it is not a scene from Genesis. That distinction matters. Genesis says Abraham sought the cave after Sarah's death and purchased it from Ephron. It does not say he entered it earlier, followed a calf, found Adam and Eve, saw supernatural light, or smelled a miraculous fragrance. Those details belong to later interpretation. They tell us how some readers understood the cave. They do not prove what Abraham actually saw. And now the mystery becomes more interesting. Why invent or preserve a story like this? One answer may be continuity. The Bible contains many beginnings that appear separate until later readers connect them. Creation begins with Adam and Eve. The covenant story begins with Abraham and Sarah. The nation develops through Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, Leah, and the generations that follow. By placing all four couples in one cave, the tradition creates a single burial chamber for the beginnings of biblical history. The first couple of humanity is placed beside the first couple of the covenant. The cave becomes a visual statement. Abraham's family did not begin a different human story. They remained part of the same wounded humanity that came from Adam and Eve. They inherited mortality. They inherited family conflict. They inherited exile, longing, failure, childbirth, rivalry, separation, and grief. And eventually, like Adam, they return to the ground. There's also something striking about the tradition's focus on couples. It does not describe Machpelah merely as the tomb of four famous men. It remembers Adam with Eve, Abraham with Sarah, Isaac with Rebekah, Jacob with Leah. These are not flawless marriages preserved in stone. Adam and Eve share disobedience, exile, labor, parenthood, and the death of a son. Abraham and Sarah share migration, fear, waiting, painful decisions, and the birth of a promised child. Isaac and Rebekah share love, infertility, answered prayer, favoritism, and a divided household. Jacob and Leah share one of the most emotionally complicated marriages in Genesis. The cave gathers families marked by promise and pain. That may be part of its force. Death ends the competition for status. The first man, the wandering patriarch, the favored son, the overlooked wife, the mother of nations, and the father who died far from home, all become equal in the earth. But the tradition refuses to let the grave become meaningless. It turns burial into belonging. Machpelah becomes the place where generations are not erased, but joined. There is another reversal, hidden in Abraham's purchase. Genesis begins with a couple living in a garden they did not buy. They lose access to it. Later, Abraham buys a field containing a cave. He does not yet possess the promised land in any complete political sense. He owns only a burial place. The first permanent property associated with the promise is not a throne, a city, or a palace. It is a grave. That detail is uncomfortable, but it is central. Abraham's first secure claim in the land is a place for someone he loved who has died. The promise appears to move forward through a burial. If Adam and Eve are placed there by later tradition, the symbolism becomes even deeper. The cave holds the memory of humanity's first loss, and the hope attached to Abraham's unfinished future. Exile and promise rest in the same darkness. The couple who left Eden and the couple who entered Canaan are brought together beneath the same ground. That does not make the tradition historically true. It explains why it was meaningful. Today, the location traditionally identified as the Cave of Machpelah stands in Hebron, also known as Al-Khalil. A massive ancient enclosure surrounds the sacred site associated with the Patriarchs. The place has been honored for centuries by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Its long history of veneration is real, but ancient devotion is not the same as archaeological proof. There is no publicly verified inscription beneath the site identifying Adam and Eve. No physical discovery has confirmed that the first human couple was buried there. The monument proves that generations regarded the place as sacred. It does not prove every tradition connected to it. So, we have to hold three answers at once. The biblical answer: Genesis does not say where Adam and Eve were buried. The traditional answer: some ancient Jewish sources place them in Machpelah before Abraham. The archaeological answer: that claim has not been proven. Those three answers do not cancel one another. They define the limits of what we know. A tradition may preserve an old memory. It may express theology through geography. It may attempt to answer a silence in Scripture, or it may do more than one of those things at the same time. What we cannot do is quietly turn possibility into certainty, but we also should not dismiss the tradition before understanding the question it was trying to answer. Ancient readers were not only asking, where were Adam and Eve buried? They were asking, how does the beginning of humanity belong to the story of Abraham? Their answer was a cave, a place where the first couple and the patriarchal couples could rest together, a place where creation, exile, covenant, family, death, and hope could occupy the same ground. Perhaps that is why the tradition placed Adam and Eve beneath Hebron rather than near an unnamed boundary of Eden. Hebron was already associated with memory, ancestry, inheritance, and belonging. By placing Adam and Eve there, the tradition expanded the family tomb until it symbolically included everyone. The patriarchs were no longer only the ancestors of one people. Inside the cave, they rested beside the ancestors of humanity. And that leaves us with the most important question. Was the tradition trying to preserve the location of an actual ancient burial? Or was it creating a theological map, one that connected the man who lost Eden with the man who received a promise? We cannot prove that Adam and Eve are beneath Machpelah. We can prove that later readers believed their presence gave the cave a meaning Genesis itself never states. Without Adam and Eve, Machpelah is the tomb of Abraham's family, right? With them, it becomes the tomb where the human story and the covenant story meet. That may be the deepest mystery beneath the stones. Not only who was buried there, but why generations needed these people to be buried together. So, what do you think? Does this tradition preserve an ancient memory about the burial of Adam and Eve, or was it created to connect the beginning of humanity with the beginning of Abraham's promise? Write your answer in the comments and subscribe for the next investigation into the silences, locations, and ancient traditions surrounding the first families of Genesis.